Go, guys. It is 8 o'clock Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and you are joining me, the Progressive Moose, here on the Mossy Side with the Moose on the Beaver Network. Thank you for coming, guys. Really appreciate it. So, as I said, couple things beforehand, but we are going to be jumping into the debate and party platforms and all that sort of stuff in today's show. So, if you want to be a part of the conversation, by all means, send a request to come up. Come be a part of the conversation. I love it. Um, some housekeeping, guys. As always, thank you so much. Us here at the Beaver Network, we're a part of a bigger movement, a bigger collective that's really sweeping across Canada, and it's about the collective. So we can't do this without you, and we're here to help bolster your voices, your perspectives, and join in as the collective to push to hold more truth to power and hold our politicians accountable and moving the bar forward while we progress. So, that being said, guys, we've got the little heart up at the top there, the little orangish gold heart, guys. If you're not a part of the team yet, hit that heart. Come join us, be part of the team, and let's do this together. As well, we do have subscriptions, guys, so if you feel inclined, the subscription is there. And we always have our live gift goals going on, as always. So they're there as well. If you feel compelled to gift, thank you so much. It's not needed, but we appreciate all the love and support that we have seen and continue to see from everyone. So thank you so much for that. All right. So, all that being said, guys, let's dive into it. The French debate just took place, it just wrapped up. Um, yeah, I watched the whole thing, and I'm telling you, the winner, or if we are gonna say how they did performance wise during the debate, the winner, in my opinion, would be Singh for the NDP. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for the gifts. NDP, hands down, Singh won the debate with a lot of different things that he talked about. He brought up um, corporate oil subsidies that the government has really handed out for a couple decades at this point. So the largest oil corporations get, uh, subsidies from the governments when really there's some of the companies that are making the biggest profit margins in Canada. So he pointed to that saying, hey, Mr. Carney, would you be willing to commit to getting rid of those subsidies? And he did. Carney did say that he would commit to dealing with those subsidies. So we'll have to see what happens moving forward if Mark Carney and the Liberals are to win this election. Uh, Keep that in mind. Remember that, guys. It is something that he did commit to. He said yes to Jagmeet Singh with doing that. So keep that in mind. And it really goes that the NDP and Singh in particular is holding truth to power because I haven't heard any other politician on that debate stage, not one of them mentioned anything about the oil sector subsidies. And that's something that not many politicians will. Why? Because the oil sector does factor into the overall economic grand scheme when it for Canada. So they a lot of times won't say anything about it or shy away from it or pivot. So it's really good to see Singh call it out and see Carney say that he would commit. So let's see what happens that way. Um, yeah, the block leader. He really he's a mixed bag. You know what? And he's for a lot of different things that I do have to agree with. He does seem to have more of a social program base. However, there were times where I would have to question his logic or how he would go about doing certain things. And I realize, guys, if you follow politics, the bloc really they're not looking to run the country. The Bloc is a party that is really focused on just making sure that Quebec has a voice in Parliament. That's really the key focus for the Bloc. Okay, so A lot of the stuff they talked about was more geared for Quebec and towards Quebec issues. Talked a lot about Quebec hydro grid, a bunch of different stuff coming to that. Um, and I mean, don't get me wrong, he absolutely, along with the NDP, talked about affordable housing, social housing, which, to be fair, like the liberals, Carney didn't really talk about social housing. Yes, he talked about affordable housing, but he also talked about private entities involved in the housing market, and bolstering the private companies and private corporations that build homes and that sort of stuff. So you have to keep that in mind where there's still that capitalist aspect to the liberals' platform and policies and how they would do things. Um, so in that sense, Mark Carney is balanced, and I think it's important to point that out because in a lot of ways, when you're talking to people, talk about politics like I am for you right now, or when you're talking to experts, say being interviewed on mainstream media or anything of that nature, everybody's talking about how Carney will balance things out and kind of help everything move forward. And they're not wrong, okay? And this is where, the Liberal Party base is okay with capitalism. They realize that we are a capitalist society, a capitalist economy. Um, so they take that into play. And you really have to balance your social program with corporate interests if you're going to appease the masses properly because everybody wants to hear their part of the pie, so to speak, right? So Mark Carney does do a good job in that. Um, Listen, there were times where Mark Carney would talk about different things, or Pierre Polyev, where the two of them bounced off each other at times, right? When it talked about investing in Canada and Canada making investments, there was a lot of the same rhetoric coming from Mark Carney and Pierre Polyev, um, but you got to remember there's certain key things that one or the other will say, and most certainly, when I'm talking about that, it's more so Pierre Polyev. He talks about red tape. He talks about bureaucracy and all that sort of stuff. And that's where you really have to break that stuff down, right? Because just saying red tape or just saying bureaucracy, he's not giving you what the actual issues are or what he is that he's actually talking about. Okay. When Mark Carney talks about spending, he talks about more targeted spending, where yes, they are going to have to trim up the budget, so to speak. But as he's mentioned before in the past, it's about getting the most you can out of every dollar of spending, right? So more targeted spending. He's also talked about in the past doing press conferences and interviews that yes, they are extending the dental care program and rolling it out more to more people. They are going to be expanding the pharmacare because Mark Carney and the Liberals both realize investing in Canadians to make sure they have the bare basics that we need is important in moving forward as an economy because if our people are not in healthy condition, how can our economy continue to move forward? It's a basic way of looking at it, so it might sound a little heartless, but that's essentially, I mean, we're talking politics, right? So you need to factor that in and how they look at it that way. Hello, Dylan. Good to see you. Um, so, yeah, and Pierre Polyev did not mention, he talked about building homes, absolutely. Didn't talk about affordable housing and didn't talk about social housing. Okay. And those are the biggest things. Like, yes, we need the housing. Yes, we need homes built. But without the affordable social housing, like that is a cornerstone of dealing with the housing crisis right now, right? People are living on the streets. People that have full-time jobs working for minimum wage can't afford a roof over their head. So we need places for these people to be able to lay their head at night feel safe and secure in something they can call theirs, right? So, however we go about it, the fact is we need the housing, and you can't just build houses, you can't just build condos, you can't just build profit-based housing, okay? Because how many Canadians are already priced out of the housing market as is, right? So there's a huge portion of Canadians like myself that rent and aren't going to see home ownership at the current rate things are going. So we need affordable housing that people can rent, not just move into and live, because, yeah, absolutely that helps. But again, vast majority of Canadians at this point will not be able to buy a home. Um, all the parties talk about cutting GST on home buying. There's differences within those platforms or policies that they are um, proposing. Um, so Pierre Poilievre for the Conservatives said they'll cut the GST on home buying. There's no stipulations to that. There's no restrictions. So essentially, anyone buying a home cuts the GST. Where NDP, I believe, along with the Liberals, are saying for first-time home buyers. And the reason why they specify that is because if you are a first-time home buyer, the great majority of people that are first time home buyers move in and live in those homes. Okay, they don't flip it, they don't go around and then rent it for profit. They're going to live in that one. That's when you get into people buying two, three, four homes. That's when you see them getting into the rental market, started putting them up on the rental market. And yeah, so that's where it's more targeted. Um, as well, I believe the conservatives' kind of threshold for that as well is upwards to $1.5 million or somewhere in that range. And you've probably heard me say it before if you've been here on the Mossy Side or caught me on my Sunday show on my own channel. Um, if you're spending $1.5 million on a home, chances are you don't need a tax break. Okay, like let's be honest about that. I get it. There are people out there right now that are squeezing their nickels together because we don't have pennies anymore, and they have managed to scrape enough down for a down payment, and they really worked hard. There's absolutely people out there like that. However, again, the vast majority of people that are going to be buying a home at $1.5 million are not those people that are trying to save their dimes and nickels to buy a home. Okay? They've got the money to play with to spend that amount of money in the first place. Um, yeah. So, on that, what else did they talk about, guys? They talked about um, the energy sector, so oil, natural gas, natural resources, um, going more green when it comes to our electric grid, different ways of doing it. Specific question was asked if you would be in favor of drilling for more oil in Canada. And this is where there needs to be a balance at times, right? And like we should not drill more. We do not need to amp up Canadians' oil sector. We don't need to drill more. What we need to do is change how Canada deals with our oil. So instead of sending so much to the United States, maybe start refining more, right? Yes, we need to tool different refineries to suit our needs. Yes, there's more of a process and it would take a bit longer to go through that, but it would make us more oil independent, as well as, again, Singh pointed out very rightfully so, that we need to focus on pivoting to cleaner energy sources, to greener energy sources, okay? Um, which is not wrong. And that's where I have a hard time because I realize right now we do need to try and be more um, independent, so to speak. We're pulling away from United States in terms of trade. We're diversifying with other trade partners, which is absolutely great. and we need to become more self-sufficient with our resources, and that includes lumber, that includes oil, that includes natural gas, that includes building materials in general, Canadian-made products. We need to be able to make it so we use more Canadian products in Canada when it comes to home building, when it comes to, really everything across the spectrum. Um, and it really would help our economy, and it would probably bring down prices for consumers in Canada because we'd have more of a Canadian market to sell to, especially as really every party at this point has said, like, no, we need to break down interprovincial trade barriers. We need to start doing more trading within Canada. Um, you know, Carney, as well as other politicians, also saying, instead of having 13 economies, we need to look at it as one, which I don't disagree with. Yes, there are individual economies, but at the same time, we need to look at things as a united Canadian economy front moving forward because that's what we're facing, right? This is what we need to do. Elbows up, Canada. Um, yeah, so that sort of stuff. Pierre Polyev, of course, big difference in how he does his rallies compared to how he presents himself during um, debates. You'll notice if you pay attention, if you watch his rallies, if you just kind of keep up to date with that stuff. There's a big difference in the stuff that he says. I didn't really hear him say the word woke. Okay, didn't come out of his mouth during debate because that's not what the broader voters want, right? When he does his rallies, that's to wind up his base. So all his slogans, all his catchphrases, all his dog whistle words, as I call them, not a peep. Um, was there absolutely times where the candidates really on the broad spectrum agreed with each other? Absolutely. One key time I'll point out though is when they were talking. Sorry, thank you guys. When they were talking about um, UNRWA and pulling away from humanitarian aid and stuff like that, Pierre Polyev did say, "Hey, no, we need to pull away. We need to stop." Da 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 da. And Mark Carney, everyone else was like, "Hey, no, like this is important. This is stuff that needs to be done." And they did talk about Gaza in particular, and I am going to talk about that now because I think it's important that the leader of the NDP party, Singh, right there on the debate stage, called Gaza what it is. It is a genocide. So, very well done, Mr. Singh. I hats off, metaphorically speaking, because I'm wearing my headset over top, but hats off to Singh. Like, that man hit the nail on the head right there, and that's what we need to see from our politicians. Openly calling things such as that what they are. That's what we need to see. Um, Mark Carney was very um, empathetic. He didn't go as far as to say it was genocide, but he absolutely did point out, like, no, we need a ceasefire, and we need to get humanitarian aid flowing back into Gaza. Okay, so very, very strong about that. Didn't go as Singh did when it came to the rhetoric, but he absolutely did make sure to point out, like, no, there needs to be ceasefire and there needs to be humanitarian aid. And with that being said, a lot of the talking points that we did hear from Pierre Polyev, I quickly want to point out. People want to sit there and say that he's nothing like Trump. However, look at all his talking points, right? Moving away from UNRWA. Stop sending humanitarian aid. Stop doing this. We need to do this. We need to do that. A lot of the talking points are exactly the same as Trump. So keep that in mind, guys. So far, the consensus is Carney did well. No, and you know what? Carney absolutely did well. I will admit I am somebody that I hate corporations. Okay, so keeping that in mind and realizing how biased I can be at times, I really do hate how, yes, I realize Carney is the best option at this point um, to lead the country given what we're facing, but I don't like the fact that he's okay with mingling the private and public sector, like using public funds towards private sector. That's where I have a big issue. Um, okay, so I'm just being fair and letting you guys know that that I'm always going to be that way. So yes, I will absolutely admit Carney is the best candidate we have on the federal level to lead the country as prime minister. Um, However, I myself will be going to my local debate for my writing tomorrow night, so I won't be catching English live on the national level, but I'll be watching it afterwards, of course. But because of my local writing and how well the NDP has done for this writing, they've had the writing for quite a while and they've done really well. So I'm going to probably vote NDP uh, solely on my writing here, my little part within Canada because that's how how politics works. We vote for MP, and I can understand, guys. I will always bolster smartvoting.ca. Make sure you're informed. If you want to strategically vote, absolutely do it. I am, I don't have any issue with it whatsoever. I'm just breaking down how I plan on voting for myself within my riding. That's just how I do things. But I will be catching our local debate tomorrow night, um, so that'll be good. Yeah, guys, if you want to come up and be a part of the conversation, by all means, send a request. I'd love to talk to everyone, get their thoughts if you watched the debate or if you have anything to add just on platform or anything like that that you've seen or want to discuss from any of the parties, really, or any of the candidates. I'm down to have that conversation. So please request up and come have a chat. Um, yeah, the block actually, I won't lie, surprised me. I do think that I underestimated the block in terms of how they view things. And I think it's because I don't actually live in Quebec, so media tends to, like, we do hear what happens in Quebec, absolutely, but I think um, kind of the rest of Canada doesn't pay as much attention to um, Quebec issues or what's going on in Quebec as much as we probably should. So I will honestly admit I was shocked and surprised with some of the stuff um, that he had to say in a good way. Absolutely, I think he sounds like he's got a balance. He sounds like he's probably between, like, the block is between the conservatives and the liberals when it comes to, I think, policy and how they view things, like social programs and helping the working class. That's how it came off to me anyway. And like I've said before, I realized the bloc is more of a Quebec kind of, just wanting to be Quebec's voice in Parliament. They pretty much understand, like, they're not going to get the leadership of the government. They're just making sure their voices are there. So, I mean, good on him. He stayed pretty chill. He explained himself pretty good. So credit to him with that. I will, though, push back. He did say that he has not yet sat down with Mark Carney and criticized Mark Carney for not sitting down with him. However, Mark Carney did point out, and I do remember that all of the premiers sat down with um, Prime Minister Carney and hammered out things to do with tariffs and whatnot. So that did happen already. That was within Carney's first week as Prime Minister. So he, in fact, has sat down at a table with the Premier of Quebec, as well as all the other premiers. So where he's getting that he hasn't talked to him or sat down with him, I don't know. Um, Tella, moose, moose, move, rock, rock, rock. Good to see you, Tella. Yeah. So, but yeah, NDP, Singh nailed it, guys. He really did, and it's I hate that their platform and people just don't pay enough attention. I realize again, given kind of the landscape of everything right now in politics and what we're facing, I get it. There's massive shifts all across the board when it comes to voters. Um, I just think like the NDP needs a better shot, and I think if Singh can't manage to kind of pull up from the slump they're in the polls, I do say that maybe it is time for him to kind of step aside and them get a new leader after this election. Um, I'm not going to say like he has to pull a win out of his ass, but definitely bring it back up because if the polls are right or close to being right, the NDP's in for a world of hurt when it comes to seat numbers, guys, and it really is unfortunate because given what they've been instrumental. Um, in when it comes to things we've seen as Canadians, like pharmacare, like dental care, like the national lunch program for kids in school. So many good policies and so many good things have come down the tube to Canadians because of the NDP under Singh's leadership. So, I mean, as much as their numbers are dropped, he really has been instrumental for Canadians. Um, you know, but I'm hoping for the best numbers for them. I really am. And it'll be interesting to see, given that I myself and others, and how many people have been paying attention and looking at smartvoting.ca as a key resource in how they're going to vote, right? So we need to factor that. Yippee ki yay, guys! Oh yeah, it didn't last long enough. All right. Thank you so much for that. Um, yeah, so it'll be interesting. Like I said, I think it's sad to see the NDP lose the support in the polls like they have, and hopefully somehow it's able to get turned around. They won't lose as many seats this election, and in the future somehow, some way, they're able to turn around and get back into the game and be more prominent in Parliament again. Um, but we won't know until the election actually takes place and is done with, guys. So it was unfortunate. I realized the green wasn't there, and I realized why. And the green really has been more targeted, in ridings where they have done well already. I believe there's one in Quebec. I know there's one here in Ontario, one seat, and of course I think it's BC where the Greens are. So they're more targeted in the spots they already have quote unquote strongholds or the ridings. Thank you guys so much. Um, so yeah, it's unfortunate we couldn't see Elizabeth May up there. I think she does a fantastic job. Their policies are sound. She's always been outspoken and spoken her mind, and she's really been a great voice um, for the progressive side of things. In all honesty, so um, yeah, hopefully we can see something a bit more come from the green. I like to see even a commercial. I realize they might not have the funds to do so, given the size of the party and how they've been fundraising. But yeah, you never know. Yeah. Other than that, guys, now it's just waiting for the English debate, see how that goes. I've already heard some people say, well, it's going to be the same questions, all that sort of stuff. No, it plays out different, and the questions are different, and it absolutely plays out different. Because it's a different debate. They're not going to debate the same way. You know, who knows? Carney could get some zingers in the next debate. I'm sure we'll see Singh get some more good zingers in there towards other politicians. Absolutely. Pumpkin spice. I didn't see that. Um, I definitely didn't see that or hear that. So I'm gonna say no. Maybe I missed it somehow, but no, I don't believe Carney said that. Again, guys, if you want to come up and be a part of the conversation, talk about it, by all means, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. Don't forget to keep tapping that like button, guys. Sharing is caring. And yeah, we've got the gift goals going on. So if you feel compelled, they're up there as well, guys. We do have Discord and YouTube. So come join us over on those two platforms. Links in our bio for Discord, and of course the Beaver Network over on YouTube. Yeah, I was actually just thinking, Pasty Native. Thank you for pointing that out. I do remember hearing that as well. So it's important to keep that in mind. He has a non-binary, I believe. Yeah, non-binary child. So I definitely don't think that he would be making a comment such as that. So thank you for that, Pasty. Really appreciate you helping me get my brain in gear on that. Yeah. So other than that, guys, that's the really the best I got for you. There was really they talk about immigration and of course, the conservative talking points on immigration were all the same. Um, I've been watching a lot of different stuff on now that I've been more in a better mindset for taking in information and do more with political information. I've been taking in a lot more lately, and you know, guys, it's really one of those things that I already knew this for a while, but I'm going to break it down a bit more. So, for on immigration, it's really like it's like walking a tightrope, okay? Because Canada is a country that has always relied on immigration for workforce. Whether you want to talk about temporary work permits, whether you want to talk about people immigrating um, and becoming Canadian citizens in the fields that we need them, we hear a lot of talk about targeted in terms of healthcare workers from other countries. Um, you know, especially right now, there's a lot of conversation around people within trades, prioritizing people that have the skills in the trades to come over, you know, be more eligible because we need that more right now to streamline so they can help build housing, um, which, of course, like we need the housing, we need the workforce to build the housing, but that's where the tightrope is, right? Because we can't, right now is really like you have to balance it because you can't bring too many people to Canada because we have the housing crisis, but we do need the people and the skilled trade workers to build the housing, right? So we, we need it, but it's got to be strategic, okay? And again, it's the same with the healthcare. Look at right now within the healthcare system in the United States with everything going on, there's a lot of people and a lot of doctors and nurses that are really thinking of, you know, going other places. So right now, you probably heard that there is a lot of talk of targeting American nurses and doctors, trying to get them to possibly come and help us up here in Canada. You know, take up positions up here because we really do need the medical sector workforce, for lack of better words. So there is a lot of talk around that right now. Um, yeah, all this sort of stuff, guys. Like, there's so much. We need to train. So to keep going with my thought process. Sorry, guys, I kind of get a little off at times, but to go along with my thought process. Um, oh, the misses. Do you think immigrants are driving the complaints in no housing or low income citizens?
No, actually, I don't. Sorry, Moose.
Okay. You want to break that down a bit more there, Smarsh?
Okay, I don't think it's the immigrants that are driving the complaints. I think it's the people that are feeling that that it is the immigrants that are driving the housing market to crash when it's not really the immigration. It's the influx of not having adequate number of housing units and not having corrupt landlords um, taking over the market of housing. I think that's what it is.
No, absolutely. So this is where I'm gonna kind of separate it a bit here, and try and break down a bit better. So the complaints themselves, and the misses, I thank you for that. So I think what's happening right now is a lot of times when people are coming to Canada, um, whether it be on a student visa, whether it be on a work visa, whether it be they're actually immigrating to Canada. And I remember seeing this just over a year ago and still today, where they're getting here to Canada and there's nowhere for them to live, right? So, right off the hop, they're looking for somewhere to help them because there was no housing. Therefore, they ended up in shelters or they ended up being put on the list for affordable or what would be called social housing, um, because the housing isn't there, um, right? So it's a bit of a cycle there where you're right, Smarsh. They're not to blame whatsoever for the housing crisis.
Right,
I will absolutely agree with you on that, but I think where the difference and the reason why I had to break down, so the complaints themselves is coming from a place of a byproduct of the housing crisis, while
right,
still seeing immigration take place coming to Canada. Um,
right.
yeah,
I can agree and I can appreciate you breaking it down the way you did because where I'm not knowledgeable and you guys help me, that to me is helpful for me. But the thing is, I think the problem with immigration is not the immigration process itself, it's um the hatred fueled by the UCP government and the racist bigots in this country that don't want to see more quote unquote brown people in this country when not realizing that if it wasn't for the brown people in this country to begin with, you wouldn't have Canada today.
no,
And I think that
and
is a
very,
big part of it.
very much so. And I mean, even to the point, I believe. Apologize, I'm rattling my brain. I got so much going on in there, but I believe the even the railroad going out west,
Right,
especially in the west, was built by foreign workers, right? So all these things that we tout, even the railroads, were built from foreign workers that came here specifically just to build that rail
right.
line.
But you have to understand that rail line that we have, the CN railway that we have today, was built by the Chinese people that came here to build the railway, but it was funded by the First Nation people in the first place. And
Yeah,
people don't realize that so much of our infrastructure was invested in by the First Nations without their even consolidation, right? So
absolutely.
it's when you break it down, it's systemic racism. It is. And people are like, not everything is about racism. I'm like, but it is.
It's one of those things that really like our
Ties into everything.
history and our system is built on it, right?
Right.
That's the whole idea of systemic, and systematic, for that matter. Um, yeah, and it's really telling. So going kind of gonna pivot a little bit back to um, the debate aspect of it. So when they talked about it, um, Pierre Poilievre, of course, didn't come out and just say something directly, but there was definitely the undertones, um, of really Zionism in some form in there. Um, but the other leaders made it very clear
Yeah.
that when it came to asylum seekers, like, yes, the system's broken because the fact that asylum seeker applications sit for months on end, or cases,
Right.
if you will, sit for months on end when they're seeking asylum. because of emergency reasons, whether it's poverty, whether it's because the country was hit
Persecution.
by tsunamis or persecution, or like the so many different reasons across the world that people are applying for asylum, not only in Canada, United States, UK, countries
Hmm.
that aren't doing as bad in regards to whatever's going on. Um,
Do you
and
know? Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I'll let you finish, and then I'll say what I'm say. What I'll say. What I
No,
say
no, by
after.
all means, go ahead,
Do you
Splash.
know that I found out that there were 600 cases of asylum last year alone, and only two of those cases were accepted?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, no,
really
exactly. Exactly. As well, I will. My mine likes a popcorn. So I'm just going to quickly throw in before we hear from the missus. But I just want to throw in where Singh made a very good point, and he talked about Polyev being under the conservative government, being the housing minister, and asked Pierre Polyev how many houses he could put his name on as housing minister. Now, Pierre had said something like 2,000, I think, but in reality, six. Six houses were built under Polyev, or he could put his name on while he was housing minister. The missus, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. And I actually persevered and listened to that translated
Oh,
debate.
it was hard, wasn't it?
I couldn't
It
I
is.
couldn't I couldn't because Polyev's face was annoying me. I had to dip out. I
Wasn't
can't.
that the truth of it? You just want to throw a dart. He stayed very calm and wasn't his normal mouthy self, and so I feel there was a little bit of a performance from him in holding it back. So I didn't appreciate that. What I did appreciate in tonight's debate was all the conversation. This might change the topic a little bit.
Mhm.
Hope you don't mind.
No.
Is this energy corridor conversation?
Yeah.
And that we don't have to build pipelines from out west to back to New Brunswick to the coastline or we don't have to do that. We can have a corridor and we can work with what each province wants. So you want to build pipelines? We'll build one in Alberta. We'll build one in Saskatchewan. You get to Manitoba, and I don't know if anybody listened to Wob yesterday, but wow, was that ever a fantastic press release around all the hydro projects
Yeah.
going on in Manitoba. So maybe you have hydro in Manitoba, go pipeline again, nuclear in Ontario. And then when you get to Quebec, they don't want pipelines. So then maybe it's hydro again. But it's a corridor of provinces doing what each province wants
And, and
instead
and
of
thank
just
you.
imposed pipeline all across.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for bringing up Wob Canoe.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important to look at Wob in one simple sentence when we're talking politics, even on the federal level, I think, because Wob, at this point, he searched the landfills. Nobody else got it done, whether you want to talk provincially or federally. He's working on essentially solving homelessness in Manitoba. He's
Mm-hmm.
working on the healthcare. They just announced that new app that they've got going in Manitoba for healthcare, where you can essentially, like, you get on there and you can access, and it'll give you times that are open for different clinics or whatever across the province, and you find one that's closest to you with the best, like, closest appointment time open, and like yada yada yada. I don't have the full breakdown, but essentially, like, he's working on solving like the health crisis in terms of healthcare crisis, sorry, the housing, like all these different things. And people want to say that progressives or that people that really are empathetic and try to govern or run policy on basic empathy and basic human decency can't be done because you have to balance the budgets. Wag
Right.
Canoe is a prime example. He is getting it done. You can't tell us it can't be done because he's literally doing it all right now.
He's at the table with the plan, and it's costed, and he knows his stuff. And when he was at that press conference yesterday, there were questions coming at him left, right, and center on the various levels of the
Oh yeah.
negotiation. And wow, was he able to, he never skipped a beat on any of it. And it was just, and of course, he's funny. He's very funny. And I love the way he's, addressing the Trump thing, signing like as if he's signing Donald's
Yes.
executive
Right.
order and making fun of the whole. It's just, it's grand. Love
Right.
it.
And
Love it.
Absolutely.
and the thing is, I think Mark Carney did an amazing job today. He was like, "That's not what I said. That's not what I said." And they're trying to catch him in something. He's like, he held himself. But the funniest thing about Wapkins's press conference yesterday goes, "This is where you're supposed to clap." And
Yeah.
then everybody starts laughing. I think the guy has a sense of
Yeah.
humor. Like
Yes, I
he
remember that. Yes.
he is so lovely, and he makes a good understanding. I had a conversation with someone in America, and they're like, "Oh, we don't need Canada. We can use Texas's infrastructure." I'm like, "That Texas's electrical infrastructure is about 50 years old, hasn't been touched in 50 years, and um, it needs to be
Yeah.
redone completely." And I'm like, "You guys wouldn't make it if that was you know,
Well, that's
they
yeah,
wouldn't make it without Canada. They
and
couldn't."
and and to that point, quick, and then Sean, you've been waiting, so I'll have you chime in afterwards. But just quickly, um, Texas, the biggest thing when we're talking about energy grids, and I equate the two because Alberta and Texas are a lot the same, where it's more privatized and they govern themselves, right? So that's where you saw Texas had issues when they had the one ice storm, absolutely, because they weren't built for the case of that extreme weather case, where we've seen within Alberta. Um, sorry, and this is where it ties to Texas because both export energy or export hydro. They sell it to other places and don't leave enough for their own grid where, Texas or Alberta, they don't leave enough for their own grid. So, like we saw in Alberta, where there was rolling back blackouts for a while there, they just,
Yeah,
self regulation, they can do whatever the hell they want, and we
right.
suffer because of it.
Right, and not to mention, just before Sean goes, what happens if Texas succeeds from the US? Then what are they going to do for energy? They don't need Canada for
Yeah,
energy, but we give 90% of our energy to the US. And
yeah,
I think it should not be at a discounted price. I think it should be at the top price. If that's what they're going to do, we just don't give them the discount anymore, just straight across the board.
absolutely. Sean, do you want to chime in?
Yeah. First of all, hello everyone. So I think my take on the debates is going to be a little bit different. I was listening more for like what I would think would translate to more votes. I do agree that Singh had very good points, and he was the most efficient about. Well, I mean, I guess you could see it most efficient. He had the least. He talked least, but I feel that he did get a lot of the points that he probably needed to across. In Quebec, I don't think that's going to translate to more votes, though, unfortunately. I think that. Well, first of all, I listened to half of it in French because I wanted to get a good sense of everyone's level of French. I do think Carney's level of French may hurt him a little bit. I mean, he wasn't bad. I mean, I guess I haven't really heard much of Pierre Poliev speak in French, and I think he probably came across. I think a lot of the Quebecers may be thinking more positively with him with what he said, not necessarily like with the environmental stuff because he doesn't. But I mean, like with the protecting the French language and him talking about his father was a francophone and I don't believe it, but he said that he talks French at home with his kids. Which, again, I don't really believe it, but whatever. But I think that's going to hit across for the Quebec population. And I also think about him, just a lot of the things he said was just a lot of like how we talked about how like in rural areas, especially like rural Quebec, you need like a truck and a car that uses gasoline. You don't need, and I think that would hit across that like a lot of rural Quebecers would agree with that. So I think if I'm gonna like, I think tomorrow we might see a bump in the conservative vote Quebec. And for Blanchette, I think the Liberals may come down a little bit, but I don't think a whole lot. And I think most of English Canada is going to really wait for tomorrow's debate to really have a good solid
Yep.
idea of what they want
Yep.
or what they like for the debate, anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been watching a lot of different things, guys, and one thing I noticed too is there have been quote unquote campaign stops in more northern remote Canada, Nunavut, Northwest Territories. Um, but I really do, from everything that I've seen and read and kind of paid attention to when it comes to more northern Canada, like the politicians really do drop the ball, right? Especially when we're talking about things that affect the northern territories and provinces, because they talk about security on our northern flank. They talk about um, the Ring of Fire in Ontario, which is more north here, or in a lot of cases, the northern parts of Canada are what hold the biggest amount of resources. So there's a lot of talk about the northern side of Canada, but there really hasn't been emphasis on trying to make things better for those provinces or territories.
Can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
The last week on Finding Your Own Damn Way, we had a guest speaker, Path to Where, and a fellow joined us, and he was from Nunavut, up north, and his name was Arctic something. Like, not been able to find him again. But he talked about, Path to Where talked about just basically, how colonialism took nomadic people, settled them in these communities, and now there's no way to, under capitalism, to make that effective. Bullshit. No, that's not true. And Wob proved that yesterday in making the hydro that would generate 450 gigawatts, or how many watts. 50 of it would go directly to Nunavut, and they are currently having negotiations. They had somebody from Italy or Finland, and they were there to open up that corridor to
Yeah.
to do the corridor to transport goods and stuff back and forth over to Europe. So it can be done. It really can be done. And also, I have a question for Sean. You had just said that maybe you thought it hurt Carney in terms of talking about the rural areas, and but correct me if I'm wrong. Are there not more voters that would appreciate what he had to say around supporting the new? I don't know what the third line is. Is the third line like a new subway going into Quebec, or a new mass transit system for the millions, as opposed to losing votes because of the Radio Canada conversation? What do you think? Would he not gain more votes because he supported the that piece of infrastructure?
Well, I think the areas that would appreciate that more, I don't think they're going to see. The thing is, with a lot of Quebecers, it's about the perform like the. I'm pretty sure a lot of people appreciated his effort, but I think a lot of so the Bloc has been bleeding support to the Liberals. Those Bloc Québécois, a lot of them are very pro French language, and I kind of feel like his lack of French in that case probably will hurt a little bit more than his policy part. I mean, it's a lot. Like Montreal is going red. Except for one riding, which will be NDP. I think Montreal will be red, and I think Quebec City is going to be bloc. It's the rural areas that are really going to be iffy, because I know conservatives in the past have, in a lot of ridings, have come second place to the bloc. So it's those areas that I have a feeling that may decide to go back to the bloc, but we'll see. I mean, again, like I said, I was really more paying attention to not necessarily the content of what they were saying, but the performance, like as a debater. Carney was under attack the most, and Carney didn't attack back very often, I found.
Right.
So it, yeah, like like I said, I think it's. I don't think it's going to hurt him a lot, but I think we'll see the Bloc Quebec WAD numbers go up a little bit in the next few days. Maybe
Right.
come back to him next week. But we'll see an increase because of his level of French.
Goodness, aren't you getting the gifts tonight? Oh, Sean,
I have to drop down because my phone is frozen. They won't let me read the comments or show up, so I'll be back.
Alrighty, Smarsh, I did hear you. Thank you. Sorry, I know it's getting loud in here, guys.
yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, for the gifts. We really appreciate it here on the Beaver Network. We can't do it without you guys. So thank you so much, everyone. Wow. Thank you. That is insane.
No,
Um,
I have another question for Sean while we have him up here, and he knows so much about Quebec. Do you think there was a purpose in not talking about the healthcare issues and saving that for tomorrow night? Why would that have been a choice for the French debates?
Because the healthcare is a provincial issue, and Quebec is very, very, very protective of that. So I don't think, like Pierre Polyev or well, even Singh or Carney, I don't think they were going to gain anything by talking about it, because like Blanchette would just come back and says, well, it's a provincial issue. Besides giving more money, you can't tell us to do anything.
Yeah, but the giving more money part's important, isn't it?
I mean, it is, but I mean, I think just opening up the healthcare itself would have been like, because like Quebecers are really protective about their power, the not the sovereignty, but what's the word I'm trying to look for? The
Diction?
No, the decentralization of power from the federal government. Like Quebecers want more power for Quebec, and one of the big issue that Quebec has had with the Liberals, like throughout like the '90s and all that, is healthcare. So beyond saying I would give more money to healthcare, I don't think it would have gotten them more points beyond that.
That makes some sense then. It's just a question.
Like I agree with you. Like saying more money definitely would be good, but I feel like I said just opening the Pandora's box of Quebec provincial versus federal powers.
What do you see as the number one issue for Quebec?
Well, I definitely think that the number one issue is the United States issue, because I think a lot of us, well, a lot of people I spoke to, anyways, who haven't. I mean, they're not separatists, but they don't really, they might vote bloc because whatever. But a lot of them have talked about like it's. If we become the 51st state, Quebec will lose its language and culture for sure,
Oh,
and that's a big issue for them.
so I want to add a bit more nuance, Sean, if you will, too, because I think it's important to realize, um, the bloc has really pivoted. A lot of people from outside Quebec really still view the bloc as like a separatist party, or however you want to say that. And I think it's important that they really have shifted since, the early 90s to just be more of just a voice for Quebec within Parliament as opposed to wanting to separate. like they did back in the past, right?
Well, well, they have gotten away from the separatist issue, separation issue, because Quebecers don't right now. It's the separation is not very popular. I mean, I think it's polling wise, it's been the lowest since like I don't know the 50s or something. It's pretty low. And like with our current provincial government, who they got part of the reason why they got elected was because they said that they were not going to hold a referendum, and they were going to focus on the economy, and that was one of the big issues why people supported them. Um, so the Bloc Québécois has, they're very much they want to go where the popular thing is, and separation right now is not big popular, and they also realize that with the whole the United States wanting to make us a 50-year state, that separation isn't like the total opposite of what's her name, Marlena Smith, how she's threatened to separate if Carney wins. Quebec isn't, well, again, I'm not speaking for all, but the people I know and the people I've had conversations with are more concerned, not with separation, not talking about that way, just trying to uniformly come out together as Team Canada against the States.
Yeah, so you're seeing more of like a national push. Quebec's really kind of like, okay, time to really, it's elbows up, like
Yes.
we've been hearing, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What did you
The miss.
the Greens not being allowed in the debate tonight?
Well, that was because they don't have enough. I believe it's enough seats within or enough support. They didn't meet the criteria anyway.
What do you
Uh,
think is the criteria, though?
uh, Honestly, in some ways, I think it's bogus. Just because I think the Green really has been an important voice in our politics, even though they've had such a small kind of portion of it, like they have. Like I said earlier, like they've been focusing, the Greens focusing more on where their stronghold ridings are. So that'd be Elizabeth May's riding. We have one here in Ontario, and I believe there's one in the east. I can't remember if it's Quebec or New Brunswick. Um, but they really like that they've been more targeted because they know they can get the support in those ridings. Um, but yeah, it really is a shame. I realize there needs to be some sort of limit put in there because you would end up having, I'd say like the People's Party of Canada being a part of the debate, which I wouldn't be opposed to. Do I think it'd be more of a circus debate if they were? Absolutely. Um,
But
but
in Canada, see the riding. They didn't have 90% of the ridings running. Uh, because of obviously the amount of money they have
yeah,
isn't as much, so they couldn't reach that criteria. However, how come the rule doesn't say the criteria based on party status, not this riding criteria? Because you need 12 seats to be officially a party status, is my understanding, and they've done that. They've done that. The PPC did not do that, right? So they've got their
yeah.
seat, but because they don't have as much money and they couldn't distribute, like it's about equity as opposed to equality on this one.
Yeah.
And so it kind of just hit me in that nudge because, as with most minority or any of the social justice issues I get involved with, it's equity. It's equity. And I
No,
think that
absolutely.
this criteria rule kind of didn't honor that within our parliamentary norms or whatever. So that was my thought on it.
Absolutely. And just to add to that, and then Sean will have you chime in, of course. But that's where like the Liberals, I think, had it right when when Justin Trudeau first ran for office, because he did one of his things that he ran on was election reform, right? And that's one thing where I think that would kind of fall under that as well is if we were to actually see proper electoral reform, you'd probably have more of a stage for the smaller parties, whether it be Green, whether it be the PPC, whether it be even possibly some of the new parties that we're seeing being formed kind of across Canada right now, right? Yeah, it'd be interesting, and I think there needs to be a bit more emphasis on focusing on electoral reform moving forward, because I think it's something it's about time, right? And it would actually, if electoral reform would also clean up what I call corporate money in politics, right? That definitely, I'd say, sway policy or sway how politicians look at things in regards to giving more corporate interest than what we should really see.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's important too. One thing I want to point out, since I was just mentioning corporate interests, one thing I did mention on my own show on Sunday was the tie-in to what we're seeing right now with the automotive sector tariffs and all the talking points, and of course seeing people lose their or get laid off or lose their jobs in Canada in the automotive sector. It's a layered issue as well, because there's other factors at play, especially within the automotive sector. The market really had been coming to a standstill. One thing a lot of people don't realize is the inventory in which sits in North America has been up by, I believe the last time I looked, has been up by about 10%. Um, at this point, which is massive, right? You still have hundreds of thousands of models from 2, 3 years ago, either sitting on lots or sitting in a warehouse somewhere, because they just can't rid of them, right? So, one thing I'd mentioned before 2025, at the end of December in 2024, was that the automotive sector might actually see some sort of bailout from North American governments because of this. The sector was already dropping, so I think that's one thing we need to keep in mind as well. And I think Mark Carney's kind of putting that into the thought process, because especially with the tariffs we're seeing from the United States, mixed with where the automotive sector was heading in terms of overstock and really taking a dip. Um, it, he did say he would target um, quite a bit. I think it was 200 billion dollars or something towards the automotive sector, and that includes, of course, helping workers that have been laid off or lost their jobs because of tariffs. But also, aspect is to incentivize companies to continue to have facilities, or broaden production in Canada. Sorry, I know that was a rant, guys.
About, just on the last part of it, though, that kind of money is just laying around that they could just come up with, and they can help the automobile sector like they did with COVID, like they do with so many other different things. This whole capitalist system lies to us about how much money is available to help with these kinds of social problems. And so, yeah, I have to drop down out of the boxes. Thanks for letting me come up and share a few thoughts about that wonderful debate. And
Yeah,
Sean,
not a problem.
really eager to hear your when I read today that you were joining the show because of your French perspective, right? Just how you hear it and interpret it, and uh,
Yeah.
the way we have to, according to translators, because sometimes I didn't know who was talking, right? Like, was this Polvier's statement, or was this Jake Mead's statement? Like, which each one had their own translator, and they all
Yeah.
sounded alike. I didn't know who was talking sometimes, so
Yeah, that's true.
so that became, so I was kind of interested in your clarity on that. So thank you, and
Well,
thank
thank
you for
you.
your time today too, the Moose, and we'll see you soon in cyberspace.
Yes, thank you so much. Just quickly before you go, though, would you like to kind of plug your show for tomorrow?
Yeah, so tomorrow's show, Finding Your Own Damn Way at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. No guest, all things elections. I'm going to take some of the pearls from tonight's information, regurgitate that in tomorrow's show again. And we're just going to stay centered on the elections conversation. And so I hope to have a spicy debate. I hope to drop a couple of F bombs in the course of a couple of hours and just have some fun with it tomorrow. Yeah.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Thank you for so much for coming up.
All right. Bye
Thank you, Mrs.
bye.
Sean, what are your thoughts at this point?
Well, first, I would just want to just mention, address Joker's comment, if Joker is still here, that I agree. The politicians aren't talking about a lot of things that, like the severe issues, because I believe it's a matter of privilege. Because they want the privileged vote, so they are talking about points that will get the privileged people voting for them. I think though Singh did a great job at addressing some of those things in general. But overall, yes, like the politicians are going to focus on the people, the majority of the people who have the privilege. It is unfortunate, but yeah, I agree. When it comes to the auto sector, I really hope. Well, first of all, if Carney wins, which I hope he does, but if he is going to bail out the auto sector, it definitely has to be different than it was in 2008. In 2008, it was like a lot of the money was just went to bonuses, and that's. They need to control the money better and make it go to the workers and not have the CEOs and the shareholders gain from that at all.
No, absolutely, and I think that that would have to go to that would definitely have to be stipulated, and that's a very good point. Absolutely, thank you for making uh, that example of 2008. I didn't even think of that as we're talking about it, so thank you. Pacey Native, did you want to chime in?
Uh, from what I saw of the debate, a lot of it was Polyev talking about the lost liberal decade and rehashing, like, Justin Trudeau lives rent free in that man's brain.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and it's a lot of the same talking points that get regurgitated time after time. And this is where when you watch experts or you watch a breakdown of politics right now, like the conservatives are flailing because they can't get away from the slogans, right? As much as we see, whether it's in a press release or a commercial for Pierre Poilievre, he talks about Carney being a sloganeer, but I mean that's essentially what Pierre has built his campaign on even before, way before the election, right? That's what we've been hearing for 2, 3 years at this point. Um, is all the same sloganeering and talking points from the conservatives. So no,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
the denying things that he said when he became the head of the Conservative Party kind of pissed me off, and the
Yeah.
blatant lying through his teeth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It, guys, there were quite a few times where he got called out for different things that he said um, back in 2022 and other times. Pasty Native brings up a good point. There were definitely times where Pierre Poilievre, and you can go find these videos where he says that, Indigenous people just need to learn some work ethic, or what was the one tonight, Pasty? I'm for some reason drawing a blank. What was the one that back from 2022 that Singh had pointed out? Do you remember?
Defunding, I believe it was dental care and getting rid of the
Oh, no,
pharmacy.
no, healthcare, healthcare,
Yeah, the healthcare.
defunding healthcare.
Privatizing it.
Yeah, and that was one of the biggest things. And I want to point out to people when conservatives are talking about fiscal policy. Pierre says, for every dollar spent, we need to find a dollar savings. So as much as he doesn't say he's going to cut from healthcare, or he's not going to cut dental care, or he's not going to cut national lunch program, or he's not going to cut this, he doesn't actually say that. All he says is a dollar spent is a dollar we need to save, right? So where is he cutting that spending? Where is he going to save that dollar from every time that he spends a dollar, right? Plus, he's talking about cutting taxes to the um, rate that he is. He was saying 15%, which absolutely sounds good for the Canadian people. But at the end of the day, if you want to cut that much taxes, um, and yes, it'll save us money, but at the end of the day, that's going to plummet what the government has to work with for a budget, right? So you need to
Yeah,
balance. You can cut taxes, but you need to balance it and not go too far because then you won't have the money you need to be able to fund the programs you already have.
yeah,
AJ,
yeah. I have a question. What's your opinion on Trump?
what's my opinion on Trump? I think Trump is an orange Cheeto that has no business being in politics.
I agree, and here's why I don't like him. I'm American myself. Here's why I don't like him. I think that Trump is like he supports a certain group of people that I don't like, and I'll just say who they are. They're the niggers. The niggers.
Whoa, whoa,
I don't
whoa,
like the
whoa,
niggers.
whoa, whoa, whoa,
Whoa, dude.
whoa.
Nigger.
Yeah, no, we're
I hate
not doing that,
niggers.
and
I hate niggers.
you
I hate
need to
niggers.
go right
Nigger.
now. Thank you to
Holy
whoever did
crap.
that. Wow,
I
guys.
got him out. Because
Yeah,
hell
thank
no.
you. I wasn't quick enough. I was trying.
Whoa.
Jesus. That's the first time I think I've had that happen on a on a live here on the Mossy side. So I apologize to everyone that is here enjoying the live for that. I definitely didn't vet good enough when I let them up, so I apologize on that, guys.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So all that being said, guys, I think I am going to wrap things up. We're over time anyway. But before we go, since we have the Pasty Native and Sean both up here right now, guys, would you like to plug your show before we take off tonight?
Sure.
Sure.
So, well, do you want to go, Pasty, or do you want me to go?
Sure. On Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern, we
12:30.
will have, or 12:30. Sorry. My brain still isn't functioning properly. I apologize.
It's okay.
12:30 p.m. Eastern, we will have the Rainbow Connection on the wonderful Beaver Network. And this week we were just going to open up discussions about the upcoming election, with it being so close, so people have a free space to talk about their fears and what may happen.
I also think that we should just at least briefly talk about what happened in the UK and what happened in Hungary.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah, we'll be touching on that briefly, but mostly talking about, our election and how it's going to affect the LGBTQ community and
how we could possibly follow suit.
exactly. Yep.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, guys. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for allowing us to promote our show.
Yes,
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and honestly, when we're talking about whether it's UK or Hungary, or even other countries that are facing where they are walking back rights for individuals, especially the LGBTQ community, it's very important to realize when you have a global push and you see more countries really restricting rights um, for marginalized communities. It, when there's a global push, it's going to affect us. We've already seen, I mean, look at sentiment in Alberta, look at things that are happening across Canada. So we've already have some of the same issues, just not to the same extent. And with a global push, the possibility of it getting worse in Canada is definitely raised because now there's a president kind of sweeping across the globe saying like, hey, no, it's okay to restrict these rights. So
Yeah.
very important to tie in to again what we see in Canada and how it affects the movements globally to finally see equality.
Yep.
So absolutely sounds like it'll be a great show. Thank you so much for both of you um, and what you do here on the Beaver Network.
Well, thank you. It's you guys have made it a safe space for us, and we're happy that we're able to, first of all, join in spreading the awareness and information. But like in general, like the Beaver Network, we're here to help. Well, not well, just help. Yes, help. But I mean, in general, spread awareness and information, and the progressive views. Because progressive voices in North America are trying to be silenced. So we need to speak up louder.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome. Alrighty, guys, time for me to wrap it up. We are definitely over time. I want to thank everybody for showing up, everyone that came up onto the panel, was a part of the conversation. I appreciate John absolutely giving us the perspective from Quebec itself. The misses for coming up. Pacey Native, of course, as always, and everyone else that was a part of the conversation in the comments and other people that had come up. Thank you so, so much. Again, uh, we are the Beaver Network and we can't do it without you guys. So until next time, stay safe, stay sane, take care of your loved ones, and take care of yourself. I'll see you next time, guys.